Hi, I'm Michael Williams. I helped raise 3 wonderful daughters, and I know that your child's education is such a concern right now in this new era of distance learning. So I went onto Facebook and I asked you to give me your questions and your concerns so that we can take them straight to Dr. Donald Fennoy. He's the superintendent of the Palm Beach County Public Schools District, the 10th largest district in the nation. Dr. Fennoy, let's jump right in with some of the questions we've had from people who responded to me on Facebook. We appreciate your time. A lot of them asking about graduation, summer camp. Leela Amarin asked, class of 2020, why not have a traditional graduation at each high school with only students on the football field?
Yeah, so the biggest reason that's not a route that we're choosing to take is just student safety. You know, so much of our decision making over the last month and even moving forward is guided by orders from the governor's office and then federal orders. And so as of right now, the only thing that I can 100% guarantee is a virtual graduation. I think there's also the reality of post-May, when the students are officially graduated, you know, whatever happens this summer, you know, kids, you know, if the social distancing rules have been lifted to a point where people can gather in large groups, I'm sure kids will be going off to college and doing all those things. And so our goal is right now to do a virtual graduation. However, as soon as we get the clear to do large groups and we can do it in a safe manner, we will explore all those options.
What will a virtual graduation look like?
Well, we are very fortunate here in Palm Beach County to have our own television production studio, and we have a wonderful lead, Claudia Shea. So essentially, it'll be all about the kids. It'll follow the same format as the traditional graduation. It'll have speeches from all the class officers. It'll have speeches from the principal, but it'll mostly just be images and pictures of the kids. Things that they're sending us, things that, you know, yearbook things that they haven't seen yet, performances of their different groups, sports. So it's really going to just be an hour and a half of us celebrating the wonderful class of 2020.
And will that be school by school or sort of a district-wide virtual graduation?
No, it'll be 32 unique different graduations.
Wow. Oh, I do have to follow up with one question. We'll see what happens. April Schmidt, Kircheville, asked somewhat of the same question, but said, but why can't he just schedule a graduation in July like Indian River and Martin counties are doing? And the seed of that answer, I think we had. You've got a huge school district here, 10th largest in the nation. The logistics are different. But to her question, what do you say?
Yeah, a much different situation. We 32 graduations, 14,000 students that we would have to figure out a way to make that happen. Again, until there are concerts and big sporting events, the likelihood of us, and you have to remember, we have high schools that will have as many as 800 to 900 graduates. So even figuring out the logistics, how to get them in a parking lot and keep those kids safe is just a big task. So again, once we get the all clear, and if communities and families are still interested in it, which I know they will, we will do something.
Allison Schmidt asked, and we got a lot of questions on this when we sought questions on Facebook. Allison Schmidt asked, if kids can't go to summer camp in Palm Beach County, then parents can't work. We need decisions on summer camp. Your response, what's happening there?
Yeah, most summer camps are not run by the school district. Those are typically, you know, individual, you know, different groups. And so we don't control that. As of right now, our own summer school, we're working on our own virtual summer school. Right now, we have not opened our buildings back up, until we understand fully the protocols associated with bringing groups of people together, keeping not just our kids safe, but also our employees safe. We don't have access, even though we're the largest employer in Palm Beach County, we don't have access to testing. I can't just give out random testing. So again, everything right now is just predicated on our ability to keep people safe.
Julie Bricker asked, will public schools offer the extended school year program over summer?
So we're not sure exactly what the extended school year program is, but we will be offering educational opportunities throughout the summer through all of our platforms. So we're very, again, fortunate here in Palm Beach County. Not only do we have the distance learning that the majority of our families are experiencing, we also are creating television programming through our television stations. Other channels have given us bandwidth, so we are K through 12, we have television programming associated, and we're going to have all of that running throughout the summer.
Will young people be physically in buildings during the summertime at this point?
As of today, the answer is no. We do not have We have not been given that type of clearance. We're in constant communication with all the other school districts, all of our different associations, the State Department of Education. As of today, nobody has given the all clear to bring groups of people back together.
Dr. Fennoy, Christine Franze Martin asks, as a follow-on, will summer school for our ESE, exceptional special education students, be done virtually?
Yes, as of right now, they will be done virtually. I've been on many calls as it relates to our special education services. Again, not ideal, but we're doing the best we can right now. Obviously, there's a range of services that have to be provided to children with special needs, everything from feeding to diaper changing to just being with them. So right now, that's all not really possible as we think about the realities of keeping our workforce and our kids safe. But we're constantly exploring it, and it's evolving daily.
Doctor, your team has done such a marvelous job with making sure children who need meals have had access to them. Will that continue through the summer?
No, yes. So we're actually going to be expanding that as the need is greater than just the kids right now. We've been able, we have superheroes in terms of our food service workers that have been out there who've served, I think, in excess of 1,400,000 meals. Wow. And since we've been out of school. And so we are planning on expanding our summer feeding sites like we do every summer, and all of that is in the works.
Doctor, here's a question from Susan Deary Kelleher. She says, when will senior diplomas be mailed? My son needs his before his Navy deployment. We salute him for his upcoming service, which might need to be delayed. That's a typical concern from a parent. What can you answer that?
Yes, I think when I first sent out the messaging around the graduations, we will be mailing those diplomas home. We're actually in the process beginning this week or next week, starting to get kids back into the buildings to pick up their belongings or turn in instruments, uniforms. It's probably going to take us over a month because we have to do it in small waves. We cannot have kids there in large gatherings, so it's going to take us, we have a very long schedule to try to get our children back in and get their personal effects and turn into things that they owe. But the diplomas will be mailed.
Doctor, when will final grades go out? I get a number of these questions, and one young man asked, I'm doing my final applications for college scholarships. Will final grades go out in time for any final scholarship applications or acceptances by colleges?
Absolutely. Most of those timelines have not changed. So we will continue to move forward with the end of the school year, calendar school year, occurring at the same time.
Dr. Fennoy, we so appreciate your time. I want to back up for a moment. Let's step back. What grade do you give this experiment in distance learning, both from an engagement point of view, a virtual attendance point of view, are children going to class virtually, and then from the workload for students, parents, teachers, and ultimately their performance and grades? Give us an overview of how it's working. Is it working?
Well, this is completely uncharted territory. So I think we definitely get an A for effort. And the fact that we were able to turn around traditional brick and mortar into this distance learning in a matter of 2 weeks. And it's evolving. So we're constantly tweaking it and learning. I would also argue that we have close to 98% of our students who are engaged in distance learning in some form. Right. Now, there are still students out there that, through the realities of economics, not having internet access or things like that. And we're driving and finding those kids and creating packets and trying to stay engaged with them in those communities. But I think overall, nationally, we are considered one of the leaders at the front of distance learning. And most of that was because we had an infrastructure built prior to COVID-19. We actually had begun that work back during the Ebola crisis. So we just dusted off a lot of those old plans and tweaked them to this new reality. And so we're getting ready to roll out our 2.0 version with the understanding that in the fall, we're not going to dismantle our distance learning. I think families will be choosing, in some cases, to not send their kids back in building, even if we're given the all clear. There are children like my own personal child. I have children in the school system, and they're on this platform every day. And so I think we have to think differently about attendance. We have to think differently about all of this. But I think until there's a vaccine, we're going to have some form of distance learning taking place, because you never know when the call will come down from the president or the governor for us to shelter in place again if there's a second wave.
A lot of parents worried, is my child going to be ready for the next grade? Julianne asked, I worry about valued time my children are missing out on. How will we know if they're ready for the next grade? And a lot of parents said, maybe I should hold them back because I'm worried. What do you say to her concern and to that question about holding a child back?
Yeah, I think it definitely has to be a conversation amongst the families and the schools. So principals, teachers, because everyone was in this situation, the school system's going to have to make allowances and adjustments for that. It didn't happen to one group of people. It happened to everyone. And so I think we're going to have to be flexible. We hear that concern loud and clear. Some of that is actually driven by the state on whether or not a child can be retained if they've met certain benchmarks and measures. So a lot of that, my answer is somewhat vague because some of it will be driven by a larger conversation because they're not going to want something to happen to Palm Beach that can't happen in Indian River or Dade County or Leon.
How do you mean? I'm not quite sure I understand.
So there's a level of consistency that drives, what we call people progression. That's not something that each individual county comes up with on their own. There are tweaks to it, but it's actually driven and given to us by the state of Florida. We like in our case, we added community service hours to what we call people progression. So at our last board meeting, we took that back. We don't want kids out there doing community service and making themselves unsafe. But that's just one piece that we added. But the overarching guidance is given by the state.
Are you worried about too many parents holding their children back? I know there's some warning flags you have for parents about being too cautious about holding their children back from progressing. What are those?
Yeah, I think there's some concern. I mean, we have not done yet a survey. We don't know what those real numbers look like. A lot of these are just conversations that people are having, but we hear them. And so we're taking that into consideration. And our academic team is working through all the possible scenarios. It could be where some kids come back. My oldest child is in the 6th grade. And if I were one of those parents, maybe he starts the year in 6th grade, but then transitions to 7th grade at the break. I don't know. Now, I'm not doing that. My child is doing very well, so he will be moving on to the next grade. But I think I think a lot of these scenarios are going to be case by case with some overarching guidance from the state and our policy-driven teams.
Are you at least seeing that, I think we've touched on, but it's worth reiterating, that attendance is pretty darn good, virtual attendance, that grades are holding up, that overwhelmingly most children should be able to move on to the next grade? Is there any early sense, any early gut feeling you have from the data you're pouring through?
Yeah, I think most kids would. I think you have to remember the first 3 quarters is when a large swath of our teaching and learning goes on. The 4th quarter, honestly, is when we start ramping up for all of our testing, state testing, IB testing, AP testing. Right. So a lot of that was getting ready for that. I think we are, our preliminary indicators suggest that the majority of our kids should move on. Now, again, we're so flexible. We haven't yet heard from the state on how they feel about that. And so we are in a flexible mode to listen. But we also don't want to create, overcrowded classes in 3rd grade if everyone decides to keep their kids held back. So our budget, our allocations of teachers are predicated on a lot of different factors.
Brooke Michelle says, Dr. Fennoy, I'm a pre-K special needs teacher. How do we do social distancing with that age group and with special needs?
Honestly, I don't know how you do it successfully. I mean, as a father of a 4-year-old, my daughter, social distancing doesn't matter to her. She wants a hug. She wants a hug if she sees someone. And so I think that's where the experts in the early childhood education realm are working through that. I think we're going to learn a lot from how daycare centers, the ones that are remaining open, are still handling that process. Let me tell you what I know. I think whenever we get back to brick and mortar, it will look completely different. I think there'll be a series of protocols, health protocols, a lot of things that require documentation. My hope is that there will be such rapid testing that we'll know who's in and out of our buildings that could potentially have the virus. But again, so much of that is yet to be figured out. Whether or not we have the infrastructure to even do some of those things. I mean, do we have the tests? Do we have the PPE equipment for all? In our case, we have 30 million square feet of air-conditioned space, close to 200,000 children, not to include our charters, which could be another 25 to 50,000 once you throw in the private schools and charter schools. So it's a lot to consider to move that many people. And then again, over 12,000 teachers, almost 13,000 teachers that we have to protect, in addition to food service workers, cafeteria people, administrators.
It's an army of people you're moving.
This is a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people that we have to move in a safe manner. We have to ask ourselves questions. Are parents going to put kids on school buses? How do we
We're
protect
going
the
to get to
child on the
that.
school bus?
We're going to get to that. It's
Right. So these are all questions that are yet to be figured out.
and matter of fact is we're going to move a moment into parents saying what's next year going to look like, and that's a lot of questions we got on Facebook, and that touches on something you said. Right before we move to that, though, you hear from people said we're worried about the children who were struggling, who don't have perhaps the support at home for the learning environment, who even with a computer at home, and I know you've put a lot in there, might be sharing it a lot. Just before I sat down with you, there was a national cable broadcast that said education experts worry students could fall behind. But especially for those children who were having trouble, don't have the support at home, how are we going to make sure that they and others don't fall behind in this grand experiment that we're all having to take part in?
Well, I think we have to approach it with the assumption that kids who aren't having face-to-face contact are falling behind in some instances. I think, if and I don't care what the social economic factors are, but any parent that's sitting at home with multiple children in school is probably struggling right now, managing all those different calendars and temperaments. And so we recognize that this is a reality that we're going to have to address. I think coming back face to face, whenever that happens, mental health is going to be at the forefront. Getting kids and adults actually acclimated around being around each other. I mean, we're really on some very basic Maslow, safety and security. We've really got to figure out how to make people feel comfortable. And I just think this is going to take time and a lot of communication.
Doctor, that segues very neatly into next year, talking about the August timeframe. Janice Konigsberg asked, as a teacher, are we going to reopen? Are we going to be in the schools in August? And I know to some extent you need a crystal ball for that, but what is your sense?
Well, as of right now, all of our plans are working towards our calendared start date. But let me be very clear with the audience that all possibilities are open at this point. We don't, so if that means a revision to the calendar, I think our board is absolutely understands that could be a possibility. As you hear more around the national dialogue, the sort of pushing things back maybe to after Labor Day, but it depends. There's also a lot of conversations around the second wave beginning in the fall.
Of coronavirus, right?
Right, coronavirus. So this idea of do we push it back? Do we try to get as much time in on the early side? But even if we keep our traditional dates, will the social distancing guidelines be lifted? Now that the states are moving towards reopening, well, we're going to see what happens from that. And so we don't know what's going to happen with the reopening of our states and how it's going to impact us over the summer.
And Dr. Fennoy, again, I know you need a crystal ball because it goes to testing, it goes to what you called about a second wave. How much does reopening help, or do we see another surge? Nonetheless, Beth Clark Rubel asked, what does the return to school look like? And I think in that question, does that mean children are wearing masks to schools? What kind of preps do you all have in terms of supplies, a mask, extra cleaning supplies? What's the cafeteria going to look like if they go back to school? Will kids be on shifts? I know there's a million things on your plate, but give people a little sense of that. And just as you start that, also speak to the date would be August what if we went back on a normal time frame?
Well, I think our normal calendar date is like August 11th or something like that.
So again, to Beth's question, what's it look like going back?
Well, no one knows. I mean, we literally have over 30 committees working on every possible scenario. And so you make reference to personal protective equipment, masks. It could be standard. And I don't, you see going into grocery stores, going in other stores. So what makes a school any different? The question is, can you have that much supply on hand? And so, we've definitely ordered many masks and gloves, but the question, it's very expensive for us because we have to buy in such volume, not for our students, but also all of our employees, which is in excess of 23,000 employees. And so when you think about, redirecting funds to try to accommodate that growth, again, do the manufacturers even have the capability to outfit every child in America to go to schools? So we basically order things now to get in line for these possibilities. They won't be delivered anytime soon, as our healthcare professionals are still the ones who get priority. But every possible scenario that I think our audience is coming up with, we're considering all of them.
Jasmine Vidal says, how are they going to have the kids practice social distancing, Doctor, when school's open? What's your vision for that? You've touched on it a bit, but this is what we're hearing again and again.
Yeah, lots of training, lots of preemptive work before they get in. I mean, there are conversations around bringing kids back in shifts, sort of, our schools weren't built for social distancing. Ask yourself, in the traditional high school or middle school, when kids, switch classes between, are we going to allow them to do that? And so when I say we're looking at potentially not having kids switch classes and maybe teachers switch classes, we're looking at, different sort of shifts of kids coming in and out of the building to delay or to minimize the number of kids. We have high schools that have over 3,000 children. 3,000 kids. And so again, when I'm sounding kind of wishy-washy because every scenario is possible.
We're all learning this together.
Yeah, we're all trying to figure, and there isn't a school system in the country. I'm on calls every single day and night, and everyone is looking at all kinds of scenarios.
Susan Sheridan Russo says, and you touched on it earlier, but I want you to go a little deeper with it if you can. How will social distancing be handled when busing students to school? You touched on it earlier, but it's worth reiterating.
Yeah, I think, right now the teams are looking at creating a really comprehensive registration process. We may be forced to run multiple. So normal, I may run 40 kids to a school. I may have to decrease that to 20 and run a second shift. But then there's a cost associated with running that bus for a second wave. It could also mean that kids are, get to school late or really early. So when I tell you we're trying to look, it's like a big Rubik's Cube. It's like the Matrix. We're just trying to, what are all these scenarios look like? We'll probably at some point this summer ask the families if they'd even be willing to put their kids on a bus. That will probably drive what happens with social distancing on buses, just on the number of families that say we're going to opt out of it this year.
Nicole and Kenny, and again, you touched on it a bit, but all of these points are worth reevaluating and touching on again. She says, Doctor, and what are the plans in case there's a second wave this fall? You mentioned it a while ago.
Yeah, so I mean, again, the good news is that we've kind of experienced it, experimented with it. So I think we're equipped to make sure that every child has a device, and our teachers, like we were very, very blessed in Palm Beach County. We had over 2,000 Google certified teachers who were the mainstay in helping all of our other educators learn how to do Google Classrooms. Again, speaking from my own experience, it was not a transition for my child because Google Classrooms were part of his daily experience anyway. So he didn't have to get taught. But what we realized is that we probably needed to orient parents. We didn't get a chance to teach parents how to do this. We just kind of rolled it out in the middle of the crisis. So we will definitely be reevaluating the whole process, fine-tuning it, making it better, and then rolling it out again if necessary.
Beth Giddings said, and again, this is a point I hear again and again, I hear that some parents are already afraid to send students back in the fall. Will our schools offer an online option that students can work from home and stay enrolled in her current public school? Beth Giddings is a teacher. Again, you touched on this, but this is one we get a lot.
Mm-hmm. So as of right now, it's become abundantly clear that we will have to maintain sort of this distance learning platform for our families while they're enrolled in their traditional schools. Now, again, all the details are being worked out. But that one I'm pretty confident on. I'm hearing from a lot of parents who just don't have the confidence. I mean, think about it. Our schools are already, my children already come home with colds all the time. So, it's going to be like that. So I think for parents who are opting out, we will have a solution for them.
Dr. Fennoy, we want to move into some overview thoughts. We want to move a little bit to sort of the budget and the larger future we're looking at. Tracy Levine-Weinstock said, worried about the budget. Are there going to be teacher layoffs next school year? We keep seeing this posted for many schools around the country. What is your sense of that with the budget headaches that coronavirus is going to create for all of us?
Well, I'm making most of my decisions based on the information that I have right now. And right now, the state has not called a special session back in to readjust the budget. I think we're running scenarios inside of the district about all kinds of different possibilities, but as of today, I do not have plans on letting go teachers today. But again, we don't know, we have no numbers. Again, our budget is driven largely by, the state and sales tax, and, Disney World's not open. People aren't taking cruises. People aren't vacationing in Florida. So we know there will be some impact. We also recognize that as thankful as we are for the initial stimulus, It is not the same type of stimulus that we had during the Great Recession, and that was with the letter from the superintendents that went to the feds. We are requesting in excess of $200 million for the entire education system in the United States. 200 billion, excuse me. And that would then allow us to possibly hold whole in our current budgets. But again, so much of that is not even decided by us. It's when the numbers start to roll out, we'll have to adjust accordingly. I can tell you what we have done. I've frozen all budgets. I'm not hiring any individuals right now. So we're hoping that through some of our early efforts through attrition and just tightening up the belt, not taking trips. Obviously, we're saving money on not running buses today. So wherever we can save money, we absolutely are. We're just trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, but also understanding that the concern of our employees is paramount. But our number one mission is to provide a world-class educational experience for our kids. So, there'll be. I hope that you would invite me back in the near future when we have real answers.
Absolutely.
Right now, everything is just speculative. But once the state starts having budget conversations, I promise you we will share that information.
Speak again, in fairness to that point, this letter just went out from superintendents of the largest districts around the nation against Palm Beach County School District, A-rated school district. I know something of which you all have worked very hard on, very proud of. You were one of the signatories. And the letter to Congress said, though, that all of us, parents, educators, administrators, society as a whole need to take a hard look at what coronavirus is doing to our budgets. It was called a, quote, educational catastrophe. Speak to what we all need to focus on and understand is at stake here with the concerns you all have and what it potentially means as we move forward.
Well, I think specifically to Palm Beach, there's a lot of things that we're able to do with our current budget. We have, a family here. We have a very robust and one of the largest choice programs in the country. And we provide free transportation for that, for any family. These are the things that we've been able to do over time. I think the idea of the fact that we could afford to hand out over 60,000 devices to families. When you think about the fact that we run trains for kids to get to schools here in Palm Beach County. I can go on and on about the great things. And so when you think about this sort of catastrophe, as the letter indicated, a lot of school districts are already, operating on a tight budget anyway, so to speak. And so to have that budget diminished even further will cause us to have to make decisions that may not be in the best interest of children, considering, just think about it. We still have to maintain our facilities. If the air conditioning isn't working, then kids may get asthma. It's unbearable to live in South Florida. So it's not as easy as just, we'll cut all of maintenance or we'll cut transportation. We're all interdependent. And so I think this letter just speaks to the realities. Think about how much milk is being, tossed away because schools aren't buying that milk in volume that we used to do. And so I think you got to really think about how we fit into the larger society, and that if you show up to schools, it can begin to help with the sort of economic.
In our remaining few moments, I know it's Teacher Appreciation Week. I've had a lot of parents say, wow, I appreciated teachers before. I appreciate them even more as I'm trying to teach my child at home. I know you want to do a shout out to teachers. They so deserve it. And a shout out to all of you and really to parents and students as well. What do you want to say?
I think I want to say, one, congratulations on doing something that none of us thought was possible in short order. I think for families, and think about the teacher who's at home with his or her 2 or 3 kids. So you're teaching a class online. You're trying to teach your kids. These people are superheroes. These people are, as a teacher myself and as a father, it is not easy. It's hard work. It is hard work educating our children. And I think our teachers here in Palm Beach County have stepped up. I think they're some of the best in the world. I think our families have been more than supportive, completely understand the frustrations that exist because we're all navigating through it. And I promise that we'll do everything in our power to listen and make the necessary adjustments so that if we find ourselves in a situation again, I have all the confidence in the world that our teachers are going to step up to the plate, but I think we can make it better for everybody.
And what would your final message be to seniors who are understandably frustrated? I know you're trying to look at all options, your message to them, and then a final thought to students and parents.
Yeah, I think to our seniors, we love you. And those of us who were fortunate enough to have graduation ceremonies traditionally, our heart breaks for you. Our heart breaks the fact that we just can't provide for you that ritual, that tradition that most of us have had before. But it doesn't take anything away from the fact that you've earned it, that you're going to be a class that's going to have a lot to talk about and a lot to teach us moving forward in terms of perseverance, not just this COVID-19. I mean, these kids have dealt with Parkland, they've done with the Great Recession, they've had all kinds of things happen in their lives. And so when I look at them, completely understand their angst and their frustration and even anger to certain degrees. But I also know that this group of individuals will go on to be our future leaders and maybe teach us something about the decisions that we made during their time, and they'll make better decisions for us moving forward. And I think for the rest of the families, I think, we're all in this together. We're listening. We're doing the absolute best we can. We encourage the feedback, and we will keep listening. And I think it's important for parents to understand that not only are we educators and leaders in the educational system, but we're parents as well. And so we're all doing the best we can, and we have each other's backs.
Dr. Donald Fennoy, the superintendent of the Palm Beach County Public School District, we thank you so very much for answering questions from our viewers and taking time for us today. We wish you and your family all the best, and everybody who works alongside of you in this district. Thank you for all of your efforts, and a good day to you, sir.
Mr. Williams, thank you so much, and you have a great day and be safe.